The NAACP would like to ask, what specific experience do you have in addressing systemic racism? And based on your experience, what specific initiatives and actions will you develop to address systemic racism in Eureka and Humboldt County?
First answers, Carol.
I don't believe systemic racism exists unless you're looking for it. I am both Black and Japanese and was not raised to be a victim. I've always seen myself as an equal. I want to be an advocate for helping anybody that wants to succeed, no matter their ethnicity, minority or majority. I've had racial slurs hurled at me because I was with a white man in Arcata. I felt the gentleman that just had to say something just because it had to come out of his mouth was just ignorant. I didn't find that to be a racist incident for me. I didn't find myself to have to tell someone about it. I didn't find systemic racism to be the problem, and I didn't think all white people all white people thought the same thing. So I believe it is in pockets. It is what someone wants to believe. Whether you're white, Black, Asian, Mexican, it doesn't matter. That is a person's prerogative to think the way they're going to think. We're all prejudiced in some way, and there is no getting around it. Racism will always be around. It's how we deal with the comments and actions that sets us apart from being strong or being a victim. I'm not successful because I'm a minority. I'm successful because I work hard and will continue to work hard.
Okay. I'm going to remind the audience again to hold your comments. John?
So I myself have not been a victim of racism or sexism, which I hold equally despicable. But over the years, I have seen it affect other people, both in my social life, in my work life, and even in my family life. It's not to be tolerated in a decent society. It will not be tolerated anywhere around me, and if I'm elected to the city council, I'll make sure that any instances or reports of racism or sexism are fully investigated and stopped immediately.
So I prefer to call it systematic discrimination. I have a good understanding of systematic racism. As a senior, I'm currently disabled. It's not just about the color of your skin. People look at you different when you're in a wheelchair or a cane. Ageism took me by surprise when I have a master's degree and a marketing degree, and yet I can't get anyone to hire me because I'm too old, supposedly, right? My entire family is Jewish, and I'm proud to be a first generation American. I learned about being different when I was a young girl in grade school, and I had kids come up to me and feel my head and feel my tail, or feel my butt. And I had no idea what that meant. I was just probably in second grade, and at that time, they were looking for my tail and my horns. That's how I learned about being different. My beloved son in 6th grade asked a little girl to go to the 6th grade dance. She came back the very next day and said she couldn't go to that dance with him because her father said my son was nothing but a dirty Jew. It impacted my child. In junior high, my son was referred to as the stench of burning bodies from the ovens of the Holocaust. It impacted my son, and he learned it was safer not to share his heritage. Zero tolerance and hatred and bigotry are my stepping stones.
So racialized inequities remain a key factor in determining life outcomes for people, even controlling for every other factor. income, education level, disability, etc., race significantly impacts life expectancy. So my experience in my nonprofit role, I've worked over many years to improve resources for and access to language interpretation and translation in Humboldt County, and worked on issues that affect people's health in their communities, including with tribal communities. On the council, Kim Burgell and I led the effort to return the city-owned portion of Tuluwat to the Wiyot tribe, a decision that was unanimously made by the council and was reconfirmed within the past year, and it's still moving forward. I've attended extensive trainings with the Government Alliance on Race and Equity over the past 2 years, working with a cohort of people to examine structures in our community in cities, at the county level, within nonprofit organizations and educational institutions. And I've pushed for the city to prioritize its first ever diversity plan this year, which will guide both internal operations and how we interface with and support our community.
Anthony?
Obviously, this is by far the most serious question we're being asked, and for good reason. Systemic racism does in fact exist. And I think in Humboldt County, it probably maybe takes place, again, kind of like Jeanne alluded to, in terms of discrimination, not hiring somebody perhaps. So I will make a pledge, like I hope all the other candidates do, that we will take anything like this seriously. And it's horrible. I mean, it should not be tolerated in today's age. With all the information at our fingertips, you can learn about any culture. You can just do a Google search and learn about any culture. And our history, and even today, we still as a people have to deal with racism. It has no place. Obviously, I would never tolerate it from any of my employees. I don't go for it. You have my word on that. And I'll take it one step further. If I get elected, I plan to have a good relationship with the Human Rights Committee. They do a lot of good work. I'm a big fan of them. And it's work that should continue. I could go on, but I just feel strongly about that.
Hailey?
Yeah. So I feel that I'm not the right person to talk about the full damage of systemic racism as I am white. However, I will speak out about my observation of it. I have been to over 10 different countries and have worked in South Africa and Mozambique last summer. In my time there, I learned that 10% of the white people there own 90% of the land. That is systemic racism. We don't face it on such a huge level here in Humboldt County. However, I can tell you that discrimination still happens. I am not a person of color, but I am a woman who's been discriminated against time after time here. I was told by a previous boss that a young lady does not belong out in the field. By law, it is not legal for an employer to discriminate for factors of color, gender, or age, and yet this still happens to many people we know in our community. I've been asked to drop out of the city council race because I am too young. This is unacceptable to me. On a state level, I'd like to see change. Right now, it is illegal to record someone without their consent, which makes it hard to prove that racist or sexist comments were made to you in the workplace. I'd really like to see that change because only 11 states currently have that. I would also encourage people in our community to be loving to all those traveling and migrating to this area. And lastly, I'd like to say that I am also in support of the City Council giving back tribal land near Woodley Island. I think that is a huge deal, and I do support that, so thank you.
Leslie?
I think that all communities should be concerned about systemic racism. In my past, I have volunteered with First Nations people who are protecting their land. I have attended workshops and read books and essays about feminism, racism, and privilege. For me, it's always been important to be proactive in seeking education and participation around these issues. I have, in my performance space, held a series of community conversations on race, class, and privilege. I've created many performances that specifically address ideas of otherness, ability, disability, the way people are put outside of society. I founded a group, Societies for Poetic Action, that specifically does environmental and social justice work. One of our projects was a whole project specifically about women of color who are also activists for environmental issues, such as Berta Caceres. I've worked with and supported sanctuary initiatives. Let's see, I've attended events in support of Josiah Lawson, Justice for Josiah. I've written poetry and donated synapsis use for prison awareness art show and performances, because as we know, prison inordinately affects people of color. My platform includes more regular training in racism and equity for city police and staff, because I think we've all seen what's happened nationally, and we really don't want that to happen in our own communities. I also think it'd be great to have, or not great, but important, to have a plaque commemorating the Chinese expulsion and the Wiyot massacre, if the Wiyot people were in agreement with that, and separate plaques, I should say, and to enter into a formal reconciliation process with the Wiyot.
Justice for Josiah!
Yeah.
Sharon Blanc, representing the NAACP, will ask the next question. And Kim will be the first to respond.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. What specific experience do you have in addressing systemic racism? And based on your experience, what specific initiatives and actions will you develop to address systemic racism in Eureka and Humboldt County?
So, frankly, I don't have a lot of experience addressing systematic racism or systemic racism. I generally deal with this one situation or one person at a time, and that's the same with stigma. I have been working hard to return the island back to the Wiyot tribe. We've been working on that for 3 years. I feel like that's an opportunity to heal our city and to build a bridge between communities in that regard. I'm happy to meet with anybody with ideas on how to address the overall systemic problem that we have here with racism and stigma at the city level, and my number's everywhere, so feel free to call me.
Michelle?
Excuse me. Personally, I have not dealt with systemic racism, but I have dealt with discrimination for being a woman and for my age. And it can be really challenging sometimes. I don't think that discrimination of any kind is acceptable, and if I was elected mayor, I would make sure if any discrimination of any kind that came to me, I would address it immediately. I don't think it should be tolerated. I don't think it's acceptable, and I think we can build bridges and develop a safety net for people. I think people should be able to feel comfortable with where they live and where they work.
Heidi?
All right, well, I actually have experienced racism quite a bit. I was the minority, the only white girl in India growing up. I am a white female pastor, which is also often a problem for many people. I've spent a lifetime of not only experiencing, but also addressing these issues. In the Philippines, over 1 million people of 3 generations lived in the garbage dumps, and were considered unworthy of even being counted as human beings, counted in any kind of census. And I spent 10 years helping implement a system specifically where over 100 communities now have housing, have healthcare, have education, and jobs. I've not only experienced it, I've worked in creating systems to address it, working on real change and systemic change. So I do believe that I have a lot of experience in this, not only personally, but also in working toward the greater good of the whole, on strategies to do just some of the things that I've done overseas in our city and in our county. And it's one of the reasons why I am running, because I believe that we can do this, and it's why the last 2 years I've been working so collaboratively with so many different relationships, because that's what it takes to make real change.
So when I was in college, I did an internship in the summer at a newspaper called Black Voice News. Mostly I covered a train derailment that happened in one of our poorest communities down in Southern California where I lived. And you'd think maybe that gave me some great insight. It was a great internship. But it wasn't until I started working for my other local newspaper after I graduated that I think I really noticed how, especially the media, can get distracted. We all know what we know, and that's what we're comfortable with. And so I was assigned, even though I lived in a very diverse community, personality profile, one after another, and they were all white men that were, you know, they were the head of the chamber, they were the head of the Rotary, they owned businesses. And I went to the editor and I said, you know, could we try to expand this a little bit and maybe do some stories on people who reflect the community a little bit better? And I did get somebody who was a lovely man of color who was the head of Rotary. So it was baby steps. It was not a great systemic change, but it was a big change for me because, like I said, it really helped me realize our own biases and comfort levels and how it's difficult to reach out. And that is, again, why, and I'll return to this many, many times, I think that one of my most important things I can do as mayor is make sure we have voices on commissions and committees, including like the Planning Commission and the Police Oversight Committee, that really reflects the community in a way that that their voices are heard, because I can't speak for people. I need to bring them to the table.
Joe?
All forms of systematic and habitual discrimination and racism are wrong. Over the past couple of decades, as an employee at HSU, I've participated in several trainings on discrimination that they give on a periodic basis. HSU has placed a special emphasis for us bureaucrats. I was a bureaucrat at HSU working in payroll, being mindful of treating everyone equally. Okay, and that's something that that sometimes people forget about, and we've been very impressed to do that. Now, that of course, that kind of means that you don't necessarily get treated well by the bureaucrats, but everyone gets treated equally badly. So, anyways, but no, that's just a joke. We treat everybody great at HSU. I pledge to be very respectful of all people that come to the city council or come to city hall. That's definitely my way of dealing with it. And just one last note, I know people, Kim mentioned how they have returned the island to the Indians, a Native American tribe there, the Wiots, and one thing she didn't tell you though is that the Indian island is zoned natural resources, so there's really nothing they can do with it. So, it seems like a great gesture, but they can't develop it